Okay.
Stick things back where they're supposed to. So greetings and welcome to this workshop on making friends with your gradebook. Today we will be looking at how to do an initial setup for a new gradebook, how to add items to the gradebook, and then how you can do a quick check to make sure your gradebook is set up properly. What we won't be covering today is entering grades and troubleshooting gradebook problems. The latter is very important, especially for courses that have already started. When working on a live gradebook, it's very easy to corrupt your grades. So once the semester is started, we highly encourage you seek out assistance through help@oswego.edu or drop in on our regular office hours to help resolve any issues. Finally, we do have a lot to get through, so I'll ask that you hold any questions until the end if possible. And with that, let's get started. So I am going to try to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you are seeing my gradebook right now. So as always, when we enter into Brightspace and go into a course, we're going to...
We are not seeing, we're seeing a background image.
All right. Let's try this a different way. Okay, hopefully now you're seeing it. So anytime you enter into a course, you're going to start with the course homepage. And when we're first setting up a gradebook, we're always going to want to access the gradebook. I find the easiest way to do it is course tools and grades, but there are a few different ways to get to this screen. And the first thing you will see is actually your class list. But the first time we're going through this, we actually want to start with the setup wizard. So we're just going to click that, and the first screen we'll get is just an overview of our gradebook settings. So we can largely ignore that and go ahead and just start the wizard. And the first thing it's going to ask you is simply, do you want a weighted gradebook or a points-based gradebook? A weighted gradebook, the points don't really matter. Things get pushed into buckets, and those buckets determine how things are distributed through the course. Points is much simpler. Whatever the points of the assignment are, those get added together for the total points in your gradebook. We're going to work through a weighted gradebook system simply because it's more complicated, but almost everything that we say is interchangeable between the two. Next thing it's going to ask you is simply, what do you want students to see? Now, the calculated final grade is basically a grade that is generated by Brightspace based on the scores that I have been entered into it. And most of the time, you're going to want students to see this. However, if at the end of the semester you want to curve grades, you can change it at any point to an adjusted final grade where it shows them grades that you have put in manually. And the last check is simply, do I want students to see their final grade at any given point in time? And normally we do want students to see that simply because it helps them let them know where they are in the course. The next setting, depending on when your course was created, the default may be set to drop ungraded items, or it may be set to treat ungraded items as 0. We're going to want to leave it on drop ungraded items. Otherwise, it starts every student with a 0 or an E, and they have to work their way up, and that kind of freaks students out. Plus, it doesn't play well with the starfish system. So generally speaking, you are going to want to keep it on drop ungraded items, which just means that if a student has not submitted work, that grade is not calculated into their final grade. The only extra thing with that is that does mean as you go through the course, you will want to put zeros into for students that have not submitted work so that their average stays accurate. And then you're almost always going to want to keep the final grade automatically updated. So every time you enter in a new grade, a student's grade will automatically reflect that. This next screen is really just how you want students to see their grade. Depending on the default, students will always see a points-based grade. So let's say an assignment is out of 10 points, they'll see something 9 out of 10 points, 8 out of 10 points, etc. And you have the option of letting them see something else. The default is percentage. So whatever score they have, they'll just see something out of 90% or 80%, etc. However, you do have the option of setting it up so that it's showing an A or a B or a pass or a fail. There's a lot of different options here, and you can see any given option just by hitting the preview button, and it will tell you how that option is laid out. You can also set up custom options if you so wish. Most of the time, we're just going to leave that on percentage, though. This really just says how many decimal points do I want students to see. I have never changed this. I've never seen this changed. So you're probably safe leaving it at 2 and just skipping through that. Now, this next part is what do students see? Generally speaking, we keep these on what their raw point on an assignment was and what their percentage is based on whatever we set that grade scheme as. What we don't usually use is the weighted grade. It doesn't really do what you want or what you would think it does, and it just causes a lot of confusion. The rest of this you really don't have to worry about, and if you're using a points-based system, you won't even see this option. But most of the time, you're just going to want to leave this on points and grade scheme symbol. So again, I'm just going to continue on. This last screen is simply a layout of every change that I made. So I can review that and click finish. Now, the one thing that you may have noticed we didn't see is anything changing your view as the instructor. To do that, we can go to this settings tab in the upper right. And this first option is going to be what you see. And oftentimes by default, this will have the weighted grade option in here. So that's where I would turn this off. There's some other useful things in terms of when do I see grade columns repeated when I'm scrolling through all the grades in the class. But you can play with this at your leisure. These other options are literally just what you set up in the wizard. So you shouldn't, under normal circumstances, have to worry about these. And to get back to my regular gradebook, I'm just going to close this. Now, anytime I'm working in the gradebook, once I've got it set up, once I've done this initial setup, I really have 2 screens to work with. The first is where I view grades. So this is where I can enter in grades manually. This is where I look at how my students are doing. But when I want to work on configuring the gradebook or editing the gradebook, I'm always going to use this second tab, which is Manage Grades. Now, again, we're playing with a weighted gradebook. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is just set up some buckets for things to live in. And those buckets are called categories. And all I have to do is give a category a name that makes sense to me. Tell it how much I want that category to be worth. And then how I want the items in the category to be distributed. Normally speaking, you're just going to want to make everything in a category be even. That also gives you the ability to drop highest and lowest grades. But if you want to be a little bit more creative and maybe one assignment is worth more than another one, you can either assign the points manually or just have it distribute the weights based on what the points are. So if one assignment is worth 10 points, one is worth 20, and you use this second option, the 20-point assignment will automatically be worth twice as much as the 10-point assignment. Obviously, it's going to be easiest if everything's equal because that makes a lot of sense to students, but you do have this flexibility if you want it. And then we usually don't use the override options. So I'm just going to really quickly create 2 more categories. Now I'm intentionally setting these up so that they don't equal 100 because I want you to notice that the system will regularly give you notes up at the top. Notes aren't the same thing as errors because the system will work, but it's going to work a little funny because your math doesn't add up. So right now it's telling me that all of my weights together only equal 90%. So at any point, I can drop back into one of these categories and edit it and change that weight. And now I've lost one of those notes because that category, or all of my categories together now equal 100%. Now, of course, we don't have anything in these categories, excuse me. So let's look at how we do that. The first option is really, I just have something that I want to manually enter into here. So what I do is go to new again, and this time I'm going to create a gradebook item. And in almost every case, you're just going to select a numeric item, which is basically a regular assignment. And I give it a name. And then I tell it what category I want to drop it in. All of this description stuff I really don't use because it's usually not visible to students and it's just more stuff for you to dig through. Usually if you're using a good naming convention, you'll know what a gradebook item is, and you won't need the description. And then I just go ahead and give it the number of points. Normally, I won't need to enter in a number of weights. That'll get overwritten by whatever my category setting is. And then can exceed simply means I can go over 100 points. A bonus turns it into extra credit. So it's not counted as part of the score, but it will allow you to give extra credit points. Again, I'm not really going to worry about the rest of these options, and I'm just going to save and close this. And let me make one quick change, because apparently, yeah, I accidentally left that on manually assigned. So now that I changed that the way that I wanted, you'll see why is it? Let me do that. I'm sorry, give me one sec. There. So now you'll see it's automatically overwriting the weight. So I cannot change the weight because that setting is being overwritten by my category settings. So now I have an assignment. Of course, this is just a manually graded assignment, and the real power of Brightspace, in this case, is being able to have students do work in Brightspace and have those grades directly go into the gradebook. So that's what we're going to look at now. So I'm going to go to Course Tools, and I'm going to start with Assignments. So when I create a new assignment, it really doesn't matter what that assignment is. what I'm going to see at the top is these grading options. Now, initially, it is an ungraded assignment. I'm just going to give my name quickly. And I can tell it how many points I want that to be out of. Again, in a weighted grade book, these points don't really matter. In a points-based grade book, whatever you write in here is what is going to go into the grade book by default. And this next pull down simply tells me, do I want this to go into the grade book or not? So I could have something that's graded, but not in the grade book. For practice assignments, drafts, things like that. But I want it to actually go into the grade book. And by checking that, it is going to automatically put that into the grade book. So as soon as I hit save and close, this will go directly into the grade book. And I can see that if I go into my grade book. There it is. Now, the one thing you will notice is this did not go into a category. There's a couple ways to get it there, but the easiest option is once you've created it, just go in, edit the item, and just use the drop down to drop it into whatever area it needs to go into. Now we're going to skip assignments for a moment and jump onto quizzes. Quizzes work essentially the same way. I simply create a quiz. Add some questions to it. And what you'll see is by default, the number of points that my questions add up to is going to be the number of points that are up here. And that's what we want. There are ways to override that, but your life is going to be a lot simpler and a lot less confusion if you just make sure the points here equal the points here. And again, we're just going to add this to the grade book, which will automatically push it into creating a new column. So again, I'm going to save and close this. And again, if we go look at grades and manage grades, we'll see there's the item I just created. Now, before I use the edit option, another way to do this, especially if I'm working on a larger grade book and I've created a few different items, I can check mark items and hit bulk edit. And this gives me the option to change names, change weights, which normally you won't have to do. But most importantly, it lets me drop things into whatever category I want. It does let you change max points. I would strongly recommend against touching that, because what happens is you can make it so that the points on the assignment don't match what's in the grade book, and it'll interpolate the points, but it gets really confusing really quick. Generally speaking, you want whatever the points in the grade book are to match the points in the assignment. So try not to touch these. Again, I click save. Everything is in its category. I am happy. Now, last we're going to look at discussions. Discussions work a little bit differently. And at some point, this will change so that all the formats look similar. That has not happened yet. So I've already created a form. So I'm going to go to that form and create a new topic in there. So forums, again, are just a type of bucket that hold discussion topics. Forums are an organizational tool. They don't handle grading at all. The grading is done at the topic level. So in this case, again, I'm just going to create a basic discussion. And the settings up here largely don't matter for your grading. The one option that you will see is allow anonymous posts. If anonymous posts are turned on, you cannot grade a discussion. So you're going to want to leave that off, presuming that you actually want to grade the discussion. And what we're going to do now is go to the assessment tab. And in this case, we don't have an automatic option. We actually create the grade item on the fly. So I'm going to click new grade item. And I have to manually give it a name. Now, the one nice thing about this is that I can set the category right here. So I don't have to go back into the gradebook to do that. But here again, it's letting me manually set the points, which is fine. By default, it'll be 10. You can change it to whatever you want. And you have all those same can exceed options and whatnot. What you want to not do is you don't want to touch anything in the restrictions area. So with discussions in particular, you have restrictions for the discussion and you have restrictions for the gradebook. The restrictions for the gradebook will hide the gradebook item from them completely. They will not see it. So usually, even if you want to hide the discussion, you don't want to hide the gradebook item, so we don't touch this. So we're just going to save this. And you'll see there's a separate restriction over here. It's going to throw me an error because I didn't do this. You'll see I also have to manually enter my point value in here. You want this point value and the point value you just hit for grade item to be the same. Again, this one gets a little confusing. Just make sure both point values are the same and you won't have any problems. The other thing is you do have the option to assess individual posts. I'd encourage you not to turn that on without talking to an instructional designer, because that changes how the gradebook functions a little bit. If you want to grade by post, we can do it. We just have to be a little careful setting it up. So for general purposes, just create your discussion, go to assessments and link it to the gradebook, and make sure this point value is the same as what you put in the gradebook. And we can go ahead and save and close that. Again, we now have my discussion. You will see on anything that you create, if you see this little sort of ribbon thing, that means it is a graded item. What it does not mean specifically is that it's connected to the gradebook, and we'll revisit this, but this means that it is an assessed item. Okay, so we're going to go back to the gradebook itself now. And again, we're going to go to manage grades. And we can see we've now got a bit of a gradebook built. If you were not using a weighted gradebook, all you would care about is the max points column. Since we are using a weighted gradebook, the only numbers you really care about are the ones that align with the categories and that all of these equal 100. Now, if they don't equal 100, again, you can edit anything right from the pull-down tab, or again, you can check multiple things, either categories or assignments, and bulk edit items. Now, if you wish to, you can hide things. So let's say I'm not ready for my students to see their homework grades. I can grab the whole category or an assignment and go to hide from user, and that will simply hide it. So if I ever see this icon, That means it's hidden, students cannot see it. Again, I can make it visible. I can also go to a more detailed view in edit. And remember, I'm not editing the assignment, I'm only editing the gradebook entry. And I can go to restrictions and I can set different dates. I can set release conditions. I'd say 95% of faculty don't use these options, but they are there. And once I'm done making whatever changes I want, I can simply save and close that. I also have the ability to move things around. So let's say I created things out of order and discussion was supposed to be above assignment. I simply go to more actions and reorder. And for various reasons, it is not a drag and drop system. It is a numeric system, but all I have to do is find the items I want and just change the order, and it'll automatically update the other numbers. And I can do that within a category, or I can do it at the category level itself. And when I save that, it will update the order. I have noted that when I do really big changes and make a bunch of changes, sometimes I make a mistake and it doesn't quite line up. So after you click save, just make sure it did what you want. And if there's an error, just go back in and tweak it a little bit more. Now, last but not least, you may notice that you have a gradebook item that you don't need and you want to delete it. Now, oftentimes it will not let you delete things. First of all, if I want to delete something, it's a reverse from almost everything else in the system in that I have to click on delete first. So I go more actions, delete. But you'll see I can delete the categories, but a lot of the assignments aren't letting me click on them. And that is because these are what are called associated assignments. They are actually connected to something in the course. So this is connected to a real life quiz. This is connected to a real life discussion and a real life assignment. The manually created item, however, is not connected to anything. So as long as something is not connected to anything, I can go ahead and delete that. And it simply disappears. Now, be extremely careful deleting anything. Once something is deleted, we cannot get it back. And I would again say, do not do this in a live course. If you need to do any gradebook work in a live course, please drop into office hours or send us a help ticket and we'll work with you to do it. Because unfortunately, once grades are in there, it's very easy to lose grades or corrupt grades, and we don't have a good way of getting them back. And I'm just going to move something into the paper category so everything has something in it. Oops. Helps if I click the right buttons. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is kind of reviewing the gradebook. So I've created my whole gradebook and I want to go back and make sure everything's working, or I'm at the start of a semester and I want to double check that everything came over okay. The first thing I want you to be familiar with is the different symbols that you might see in a gradebook. So first and foremost, I want to know if anything is in the association column. If it's not associated to something, that means you have to enter in grades manually. Sometimes connections break, sometimes we change assignments. There's a whole bunch of reasons why something might not be connected. So most of the time, unless you know something is a manually graded item, you're going to want something to be in this associated column. The little eyeball means it's hidden. So students cannot see it. It's completely hidden from them. Again, to get rid of that, we can just use the drop down and make it visible to students. The little clock means that it has a date release on it. And if we want to modify that or get rid of it, that is actually done through the edit item. And I go to the restriction tab and I can adjust these dates, or I can simply turn it off. The little star means that something is set as extra credit. That means it's being treated as extra credit. Hopefully that's self-explanatory. The last option means that this item is not being included in the grades for any reason. We use this for practice assignments. We use it for things like attendance, which may be added in at the end for subjective reasons. But if you see this, this means this is not in any way, shape, or form being added to the gradebook. And again, these are both controlled through the edit option. I can turn off the bonus settings and I can turn off that exclusion. So again, both have valid points, valid reasons to use them, but maybe they got turned on by accident. Anyway, that's what all of the different symbols mean. Now, when we're looking at a more holistic gradebook, the first thing we're going to look at is this number. Does everything add up to 100% for a weighted gradebook, or for a points-based gradebook, do all the points add up to what I want them to be? And then I can also just do a quick scan of, are the points for the assignments all correct? Now, at this point, there's sort of a secondary check on this because I want to make sure that these points match the assignment points, because again, they can get desynced, and if they do get desynced, things don't work right. Now, a really handy trick for this, and unfortunately, I only know how to do this on the PC, not on the Mac, but on a PC, you hold down the Windows key and you press either the right or left arrow, and it will automatically move your screen to half of your screen. So this makes it really easy for me to have two screens side by side. And again, that's just pressing the window, selecting a window, pressing the Windows key, and left or right to move the screens around. So now what I have is my full gradebook, and I can simply go to Course Tools. I'll start with Assignments. And it really helps if I'm in the right course. And I can look at each of my assignments simply by editing the assignment and making sure that these points match the points that I have in my gradebook. This is a more advanced check. I wouldn't really worry about this too much unless you've been playing with your assignments or you have a reason to think it might be out of sync, because you do have to go through each type of assessment and check this individually. So if you're just copying a course and not making any changes, you're probably safe just checking the max points column and not going into the individual assignment. But you do have that ability if you want to. So now I just want to briefly talk about how do students view all of this. So I've got my gradebook set up. I think everything is working fine. What do my students see? Well, students have two ways of accessing their grades. If they go to Course Progress, and it's not called Course Progress for them, it's actually called My Performance, and they can either click on Grades or Class Progress. If they look at grades, all it gives them is their numeric grades. There's not really a great way to view comments from here. It simply gives them a numeric breakdown. What's much more useful for them, and I can't show you in my preview because I don't have any grades, is for them to go to Class Progress. Now, for you as the faculty member, you will get a list of every student in your class, and you can click on them. For a student, it will simply go directly to their name. And it starts just by showing them a summary, but more importantly for them, they want to be able to click on something like assignments. And of course, I don't have graded items in here, for which I apologize. But here is where I would be able to view all my submissions, and I'd be able to look at my feedback and all of my detailed feedback from the faculty member. So again, for students to really review their feedback, they're going to want to go to class progress, and that will take them to that view. And then they simply click on the type of assessment that they want to look at. There are tutorials for students on this, but it does tend to confuse new people because they think they'd look at grades, and even if they get to this screen, they think, oh, I just look at my grades up here. Note, for the detailed feedback, they actually need to go in and click on the type of assessment that they want to look at. The last thing to be aware of is if you have hidden an assessment, the detailed feedback will not show up. So if you want students to be able to review their feedback, you want to be using release dates with closing dates so that they can't turn stuff in anymore, but they will still be able to go in and review their detailed feedback. So actually, I got through things a little bit faster than I expected this time. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. But with that, are there any questions?
I'm just wondering one thing. In my grade book, it says like 3 out of 5 points, and it gives a percentage, 60%. But that's not really, it's 3 out of 5 points out of a lot of points. So is there a way to get rid of that percentage, like 60%? Because the students are like, oh my God, I got a 60%. And I'm like, no, it's really 3 out of 5.
So that goes back to go back to the full screen view. That goes back to the setup wizard, but presuming you don't want to run the setup wizard on an active class, just go to settings. So I'm in course tools, grades, and I'm going to go to manage grades. And so I want this little settings button right here. And what I want is the second tab. This is essentially, pretend this is just student view. And you're just going to turn off points grade. Or I'm sorry, you're going to turn off grade scheme symbol. So grade scheme symbol is what's generating the percents. So if you turn that off, all they will see is points grade.
Grade scheme symbol.
Yep.
Okay.
So basically the only thing you want checked is points grade. And then just make sure you save it. And then if you hit close, it'll kick you back to your regular view.
Okay, we'll do that.
Even do that in your class, though we'd have to turn off the recording because we don't want student information to get recorded. Or if you have any problem, you're more than welcome to reach out to me individually.
Okay, does it do it like retroactively?
Yes, that is a global setting. But
So
anyway,
Doug, if I'm following, then in terms of student view, it makes the most sense to have the points, and then doesn't sound like the weighted grade makes a whole lot of sense to have that. And then the schema depends on what you're defaulting to.
yeah, so by default, usually when I set these up, I just leave the default to percentage, but
Gotcha.
that's a straight conversion of whatever this number is to a percentage. But obviously, if I want people to see the A's or B's, I can change it to that schema. Or in a case like Jennifer's, if the percentage is becoming confusing, then I'll just turn that off completely. And the main thing is just to remember that you've got your personal view and you have the student view. And I can always do a quick check on the student view. Actually, from the enter grades item, I can grab the pull down next to a student and preview them, and I will see what their student view looks like. So in this case, again, I've turned off everything except the points views. Other questions?
How many people get your Mary Tyler Moore references in your gradebook?
Probably only Kathy.
Okay.
She's the one that set up all the fake names for us. So again, right now and through the end of the semester, we are doing office hours 5 days a week. You can always find those at, I just find the easiest thing to do to go to oswego.edu/DLE and then click on help and support. And you'll see all our regular office hours and our Zoom links. All of these are virtual office hours. Excuse me. Or you can always send an email to help@oswego.edu, which will automatically put a ticket into our ticketing system. Again, Monday through Friday, normal business hours. We'll try to get back to you within 24 hours at the most. Or if you need immediate help from Brightspace, you can always click help and go to the SUNY help desk. They're not as good as us. Not that I'm biased or anything, but you do have the option to direct connect with them, and they have longer hours than we do. Anything else? Well, all right. I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of your week. Try
Thanks,
not
Doug.
to get rained on, and I will chat with you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.